Hey, everybody. Welcome to our postponed DNA Day event. Want to welcome everyone who is joining us and actually live and you're coming with us in the chat. And for those of you who are watching this at a later time, we're definitely appreciative of you watching this. So definitely leave your comments and things below or whatever platform you're actually watching this on. If you're in the chat, please, and you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do put your chat questions in the chat, and we will have a actual Q&A session at the end, and we're going to have some giveaways and things of that nature, and we're just going to go through the presentation for the recording, and then we'll stop the recording, and we'll talk about pricing. We'll talk about like additional questions if someone wants to ask me a personal question. We'll do that at that time. So go ahead and put the information in the chat, and we will go from there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to, for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us today for our Discover and Decode Your DNA session. And this is just going to be a quick overview of different ways that you can actually use 100% of your DNA, right? There are so many things that we can do in so many different ways and variations of stuff that we can use that people are definitely unaware of. When you hear DNA and genetics, a lot of times people think about stuff such as using your DNA for, paternity and maternity testing, using DNA for like ancestry and things of that nature. But there's so many things that you can use your DNA for. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So first off, before we even continue this presentation, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about myself, who I am. My name is Sequoia Ashe Taylor, or Sequoia Lindsay Taylor, and I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. All that is to say is that I'm a functional wellness practitioner, and what I specialize in, and that my niche is in genetics, epigenetics, anything ethics, right, bio and genetics. I'm the CEO and founder of Ashe Wellness. And at Ashe Wellness, we assist women who are confused and frustrated about their wellness to discover and decode their personal DNA design code so they can be healthy, happy, and gain harmony. We do this by testing and not guessing to discover the root cause of the issue, right? Then we establish and maintain healing lifestyle habits. And so again, when we said how do we do that and what do we use for that? We definitely, our niche is genetics, epigenetics, biogenetics. And so before we continue on with that, genetics is just the study of your genes, right? Your DNA sequencing, things of that nature. Epigenetics is is the study of the expression of how those genes are affected by your environment. So genetics is what you were born with from mom and dad, and then that's what you're born with that will not change. Epigenetics is everything first. So nature versus nurture. What happened to you since you were born, and because of environment? So your toxins, what you eat, how you sleep, how you handle stress, how you're processing, how you're aging, all those things in your environment, those 8 areas of wellness affect, either help, as we say, or hurt those genes, your genetics. So epigenetics is the study of the expression of how the environment affects and effects your genes. There's also bioengineers that we definitely so much tap into as well. When we're talking about the energy of the genetics, right? Using the body field as as an energy field, as an energetic field, bioengineered field, right? And when we start something, when we say that, people think about magnets or think about energy, they think about chakras, they think about meridians, they think about all those things, right? Chi and yin versus yang and all those type of things as well. When you start talking about the energy, and that's very important because we're going to talk about DNA in a second as far as what DNA is and things of that nature as well. So we definitely our niches is genetics, and anything that has the ethics at the end is definitely something that we tap into. So we're able to use that. And we're also able to do lab results in that epigenetic realm. Once we do your genetic testing, if it's something more pressing that we need to do that as well, we're able to do lab testing as well. So we're going to continue on. So there are three main ways that we're going to talk about how we at Ashe Wellness use your actual DNA. And so a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, that's just one way that we can use DNA, right? And there's one, DNA is just in this one confound thing. And so the three main ways that we're going to talk about tonight about how you can use your DNA is the science. Yeah, we had kept those S words just so you know. The science of using your DNA, right? There's a science component. Using your DNA spiritually, in that spiritual wellness, emotional wellness realm, right? And then succession, right? So genealogy is what that stands for, the succession of it, where you came from and things of that nature. So just keep in mind that as we flow through this, if you add these combinations up, you're able to use 100% of your DNA. And so just think about when we're talking about DNA and using it for these purposes, that you are as a human and as a being have a genetic makeup. And 99% of us have the same things. Our hearts are in the same places. Our lungs are in the same places. Our arms, our legs are the same. But your genetic code is completely different than mine because we come from different ancestry. And then that's on a spiritual level what that means, right? And then on a science level, just as our actual makeup allows us to be completely different. So those are three ways that we're going to talk about using your DNA. First up is the most commonly known one as the science, using your DNA, your genetics for science, right? And so we use primarily the way we use genetics, especially in the functional medicine realm, is for your health and wellness, right? And so a lot of times people get one-sided minded and saying, hey, I use genetics, as I said before, for paternity or all that kind of stuff or whatever, genealogy, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But you definitely can use the science part of your genetics to discover your health and wellness. There are certain things that you got from mom and dad and from their mom and dad and from mom and dad and all these grades going back that are actually going to affect the way that your genetic profile is set up, right? And so when we say this is that you are going to discover your health foundation. You can also use your the science of your DNA to assist your genes with proper lifestyle habits. And so that's going into the genetics and the epigenetics of what we're talking about. This actually is really cool because there are millions and millions, I think it's up to like 350 million different variations of what are called SNPs. Your DNA code, that things that looks like a twisted ladder, A to T, C to G, all those combinations of those, they're counting and they're finding out different ways that those actual what they call SNPs, those connections are so varied because there's so many different people, right? And so how they keep finding out these different variations of that. And so when you're looking at it from that variation, 300, it says there's 350 million ways to that they have found out to do that, right? And that is for genetics and on the spectrum of your health and wellness. They can pull those out and say, hey, a variation in this particular SNP or this particular area of the gene affects this area. This affects sleep. This affects your stress. This affects your minerals. This affects the way you exercise. Affects the way what the type of diet you should have. These affects all these different things, and they're to pull those different variations out and those different SNPs and those different codes, as you if you will. That's why we say we're discovering your DNA design code. Pull those codes out to say, hey, based off this 1% of this person, their variations show us that in this gene, in this SNP, in this area, they're able to do this, or they're not able to do this, or they need support in this, or they may not need support in that. And why this is important is because when you're on your health and wellness journey, some people are going to say, hey, I tried the keto diet, right? I try to go to sleep at 10, it doesn't help. I don't know how, am I a warrior, like I'm a princess warrior or a fighter, or do I worry about stress, right? How I sleep, the things that are causing me that I need to supplement in. Some people say, well, I need extra vitamin B12. Well, what type of B12, right? What type of vitamin D? And so knowing those type of things that says, hey, this is what I was born with, plus the genetics, plus the epigenetics, what my environment looks like, how is that helping or hurting my gene? Knowing your baseline is very key, a key puzzle in the picture that most people do not have. They don't know what they were born with from the beginning. And so the environment has taken over. And then they don't understand that there are certain things in the environment. There are certain things and toxins that I should protect my body from that you may not have to protect your body from. And so once we get into that arena of, being able to say, hey, this is going to affect my life. This is baseline for you, but your baseline may not be baseline for me. And so that's why it's important to say, as we're building this puzzle that says you as a human, you as your own person, we have to understand that the missing puzzle piece is that a lot of people don't know their baseline. What is your baseline report? What does your baseline say about you in those different areas of life? And there's so many different reports. There's so many different ways that we can look at your genetics now. One interesting fact that you would not be surprised about, when we're talking about using 100% of your DNA, this area of your DNA and your genetics right now, science-wise, they're learning stuff every day. I'm reading medical journals all the time, information that they're learning, we're only using 3 to 7% of your DNA on that, right? So if we're only using 3 to 7% of your DNA, and there's 100% of your DNA, we're going to talk about in a minute what happens to the other percent, right? And so that's just a very, very, very small percent that we're using to give you so much information. We there are different reports when we do the genetic testing. Some people have already done genetic testing through 23andMe, Ancestry, a couple of the popular ones. There are several other ones, and then if you don't, we can help you with that as well. But there's so many different reports that we can pull in those different areas of life. So, like I said, the main ones that we focus on is your diet. What type of diet should you be on, right? What type of food should you be eating? Because you may eat keto, your spouse may say I'm a vegetarian. He loses weight, you gain weight, and you're trying to figure out why. And it's because that's not proportionate to what you should actually be doing, right? Your rest, how should you sleep, what type of habits should you create that you need for your to actually rest and sleep. Exercise, should you be doing cardio, should you be doing more on relaxation, yoga, should you be doing more Pilates, what type of exercise is going to be beneficial to your actual body, your body structure, right? Stress, like I said, are you a warrior, WORR, or warrior, WARR? When it comes to stress, that is very important to know. Then your supplementation, all right? What type of supplementation should you be using when you're talking about like how when it comes to my vitamins and minerals, right? There's a report that we could pull. How do you methylate or how do you absorb vitamin and mineral? Did you have a variation in that from birth? So as you get older and we run reports or you do your labs and you're like, I'm always deficient, but I'm taking my vitamins, right? If you have a problem with that already at the beginning, then that's going to show up, right? There's also reports that we can find out for people who are saying, "Hey, I think I may have IBS." We say, "Well, look, let's look at the genes that actually show us do you have a higher or lower propensity to IBS." Endocannabinoid, the big buzzwords and big things as far as CBD, right? How does it affect? Everybody's like, "Hey, I try CBD and I have to use a huge amount, or I don't have to use. I could just use a little bit and it knocks me out." There's actually a gene that tells us, hey, you are a person that should use CBD or you should not. You should use THC or you should not, right? Inflammation, respiratory, cardio, blood pressure, allergies, eczema, hair loss, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue, blood pressure, and on and on and on and on and on. Acne. There's so many different reports that we could pull that has to do with different parts of your lifestyle that you may be dealing with. So yes, we do a baseline of your reports, but once you do your genetic testing, you don't have to keep doing it over and over. If something comes up down the line as your wellness practitioner, you may say, well, hey, Sequoia, I'm having hair loss. Can we look and pull the report that says what is going on with this? And we say, well, hey, based off that, and then now let's find out what your lifestyle stuff is. What do I need to do to correct that, right? Or I may be having gut issues now, but I didn't have gut issues before. Okay, well, maybe we need to change some stuff up because based off your genetics, it says this, right? So there's so many different things that we can do and do that. And so that actual service is called the DNA wellness profile. For the people who are on, I won't give prices because we're recording, but we will talk about what is included in that profile. I basically kind of just told you. You have a consult with us. You get your genetics sent off to the lab, very secure, things of that nature. And then it comes back, gives us that your genetic profile is called a raw data file. And then we upload into the system and we're able to pull these varied reports that tells us about so many different things. Um, if you're someone who is concerned about the big C word, there is a report that we do, and I do have a genetic counselor that I partner with who can give you more of that. That is out of my scope and realm because even though I can pull the report and I can have that discussion with you, but you definitely want to have that conversation because a lot of people who don't even have a variation in those genes in the BRCA, they call it the BRCA gene, but then they end up having cancer, right? Especially like breast cancer, things of that nature. So definitely speaking to someone who's actually licensed in that area, we can get you connected with them as well. So that is the science piece. If you have any questions or anything about that, please do put that in the chat and we will answer them in the Q&A session. So the second way is spiritual, right? Spiritually, using your DNA too on a spiritual level. So remember, I just said that on the science piece, we're only using 3 to 7% of the DNA. So what happens to the other 93 to 97% of your DNA? Well, in the science world, they call that junk DNA. They say, oh, that DNA is junk. There's nothing that was supposed to be purpose for that. There's no reason to use it. There's nothing that we pulled as of yet, right? Because we continue to learn. That's going to continue to expand. What they haven't found out what that means yet to them, right? But if you are anyone that believes in a higher power, or you believe in a source, if you believe in God, if you believe in Buddha, you know that that's not possible. There's nothing that was made and created to you that would be junk, that's not needed. If it wasn't needed, then why is it there, right? So simple logic says something about that doesn't sound right. And I just saw a typo that I made. Okay, that's the uh Aries in me. But um the whole concept is that you know that that can't be true, right? If you're someone who is in tune with yourself spiritually on any type of connection, I'm not saying religion, on a spiritual connection to any type of higher being, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, right? And so there are spiritual divinations and spiritual teachings that teach you that there's 100% use of your DNA. That other 93 to 97% of your DNA is not junk DNA, right? There's a purpose for it. And so if you understand that DNA at its true essence, it's all it really is energy, right? Energy that is made up of light. That's why they tell you that a lot of times that you can heal your DNA with light. Light therapy is becoming more popular. Colors. You hear the buzzword, everybody keeps talking about using chakra healings and things of that nature, right? That is because at the essence of it, this is the bioengineered piece that we're talking about, right? The energy of your body energy field, the energy of you as a person, right? And how a lot of people are saying, hey, I noticed that if I my depression, or I feel down, I feel up, but if I notice that my vibration, or they say vibrate higher, if you notice that your vibration or your energy about yourself is low, then a lot of things physically show up, which is more of that science piece, right? And so you know that if you know that energy, that your DNA is energy that is mass. If you as a human being is the majority is energy, and that is frequencies that are sent. Everything has a frequency. Your food, if I eat kale, it has a frequency. If I eat potato chips, it does not. That's why my body does not recognize it as food. There's a vibration and frequency that happens when we were in science and learned about chlorophyll and photosynthesis and things like that. Is energy. That is frequency that's been expounded. That's why you're told to eat more real raw food, right? So that your body can know this as nutrients. And so if you know that, then you know that it's energy, is the frequency, your body is that. So on a spiritual level, your DNA, the mitochondria of the cell, and is really a protein, right? RNA and DNA and mRNA and all that good science, techie, geeky stuff that I can get into. But those proteins are made up of energy. And so on a spiritual side, there's spiritual healing and knowledge that's way deeper than saying that on the science side is the other side of the spectrum that says, hey, I clear and heal my DNA on a spiritual level? Because remember, I said the DNA is energy, and it is a energy, and it can be healed by light. Light shines through DNA. That's why every time you see the helix, for the most part, look at most of the pictures that you see of DNA and the helix. It has like light coming behind it, or shining through it. It's shining through that ladder, that spinning ladder. It's usually some type of light or radiance that's shown through there, because that's the essence of you. That's your core of you, right? And so down to the very cell, there's a spiritual nature about that. So changing the vibration and frequency of that is done in a spiritual way. So we're able to discover your spiritual DNA and purpose, right? There are different things that at the exact date, at the exact time, at the exact moment, at the exact location, there are certain, well, as people say, the moon, the stars, the planets are aligned, right? The way when you came into this realm and took your first breath, there is something that was on the inside of you that was made for that. So there are certain people who are saying, how on a spiritual level can I find out that age old question? What is my purpose? What is my path? Why was I put here? Why do I not feel fulfilled? And it's because the spiritual of our DNA, the spiritual nature of who we are, our core essence has been damaged. It has been so just like physically, the DNA can be damaged, so it can be damaged as well on a spiritual level, right? And so you can do that. You can heal this doing like DNA activation to vibrate higher. There are different divinations that allow you to be able to heal DNA on a healing thing. Those things, those bonds, and just like they can be broken on a science level, they can be broken on a spiritual level. Some people will hear stuff like Akasha records and ancestry work. Again, we're still talking about your DNA. So anything that was passed down, especially females, while you were in your mother's womb, you were also in your grandmother's womb, and grandmother was out. So it keeps going back. Those generational things you hear the especially in spiritual realms, oh, generational curses is where you usually hear this at, right? And so knowing of those things can be healed and broken to you on a DNA level, right? And so definitely doing those type of things will able to help with those in different modalities and services. And we do certain things over at Share Wellness, and we also have other practitioners who do things as well on that for you as well. So that's another way to be able to use your DNA. The third way that we're talking about how you use your DNA is the succession, right? And this is the genealogy piece of your DNA. And going back to real quick, um, did leave off one piece on that. As far as the spiritual one, the services that we have over at Ashe Wellness for that is that to give you the starting point is the DNA Wellness Blueprint. And this is actually where we actually do your where we find out what your day, your time, your thing, and using iChing, using Kabbalah, using a little astrology, using a couple of divinations, we pull the report and figure out what was happening at the time of your birth and figure out like basically using gene keys and things of those nature, what were your designs. So we go through your actual sequence as you remember everything that we talk about is individualized and customized care that is for you as a person. And so we use those modalities that say this is the person, how are they able to do that? So we go through the sequence of your health and wellness on the spiritual side. We go on your life path for that. And so there are four main components that comes with inside of that report that we go over and discuss with you. And then we give you the actual service recommendations if there are other services that you need, like Reiki and like we said, chakra healing and things of that nature. We give you those service and it could be something as simple as a massage, believe it or not. It could be something as simple as yoni steam and things of those natures too. So we give the service recommendations and we also give you supplementary recommendations if need be at that time. Succession genealogy, right? So this is the key that we talked about in both sessions that we've been tipping over. Succession is your genealogy, right? And so you can use your actual DNA, especially during this time where people are more like, who am I? Where am I coming from? To find out your ancestry and your history. This is very important because just for general knowledge of discovering and finding out who you are, a lot of people are lost and wandering in this world because they have no clue where they come from, who they come from. And so that missing piece of the puzzle, remember at the beginning we talked about building the puzzle of you. So building the puzzle of you, another piece of that is not knowing where you come from, right? You don't know where you got your genes from. So if you have high blood pressure and you go and say, hey, where did I get this from? Where it could have been 4 generations back, but you don't even know who those 4 generations are. You didn't know what they lived in that time. You don't know what trauma they may have lived through. You don't know what those type of things that are being passed on the spiritual level, but the science level could be you have a family history of cancer. You have a family history of high blood pressure. You have a high family history of cardiovascular. That's the science. So you're tying all these things work together. The correlation of using the genealogy. And also you understand, like I said, where your health history comes from. When you go to your primary physician, you go to any doctor, they always ask you about your health history, right? The reason why that is important, they say on your maternal side and your paternal side, do you have a history of this? Do you have a history of, like I just said, the cancers, the high blood pressures, and things of that nature, right? And so you wonder what that means. And the reason why is because usually, like we said, on the science and spiritual level, what has come from the past will come up in the future. You got your DNA from those people that kept passing by, and they were making male and female that kept making a new person. And so they need to know that history because usually if they know the history, they can pretty much predict what's going to happen with you, right? If you don't make those lifestyle changes. That's why we do the science piece. That's why we do the spiritual piece because there's spiritual things that are being passed on, and there's science things that are being passed along as well. But on the genealogy side, there's also things of just like we said, just knowing who you are and where you're coming from as a person, as we're saying, building you. Knowing where you come from is very, very important because having that identity. This is going to the part of the identity, not only on the science and spiritual side, but just knowing like put a name to something or put a face to something or hey, I didn't know my ancestor did this. This is giving you a history of yourself that allows you to have a place of belonging. This is also on that path of what am I here to do or what was my purpose, or it gives you that sense of belonging. A lot of people are not feeling like they belong. And so this is another way that you can use your DNA to be able to do that. And those services for that is going to be coming in the fall of this year. We're going to have a program where we actually we're going to be working with a genealogist that's going to be helping us to go forward and actually go through the process of using that same DNA that we did for science and for spirituality to find out about some history about us. And so we'll be working on doing that as well. So those are the three ways that we have for um, our actual like using it for our DNA. So remember, we have the science part, we have the spirituality part, we have the succession part. For a lot of people, before we get into the Q&A, a lot of people are wondering like, hey, I have no clue where I should start on this process, right? And we try to keep this very simple because some people are like, I need all of it. Some people are like, hey, I just need to focus on my health. Some people may say, well, it's more an emotional and an energy vibe for me, and I need to focus on the spiritual side. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't know because you think it's one thing because my shoulder been hurting, but it could be something else. It could be a physical thing because you slept wrong, but it also could be a spiritual thing or something else, right? And so, with those things being said, a lot of one way that we do that's a starting point for a lot of people, that tells us which way, which direction to go in. And over time, a lot of our clients go through all phases. They're like, hey, I need to go through all phases, but where is my starting point? Which one is more the priority? We use our what is called our actual our wellness checkup, and so that is a wellness scan that we do. It can be done by voice and it can be done distantly as well. All of our services are actually virtual. You don't ever have to actually come to see us in person. And so you can actually sign up for that. So that wellness scan gives us a good checkup, literally a wellness checkup that lets us know. All the way on the energy field. So it kind of taps into, hey, do we need to look and see if this issue is coming up on that science piece? Is it more science? Is it more spiritual? Is it more maybe something that was in the past or history we need to look at. Is this which meridian is on? Is this like a shock or a trauma? Is this a chakra, or is this an environment thing? Is this something that the person that has maybe like EMFs, or they're like their vitamins and nutrients are not being absorbed? Those lead us down that path to kind of spotlight and let us know where we actually need to be at. So for that one, the starting point for that wellness scan. The address for that one is bit.ly /wellness scan checkup. Again, it's bit.ly /wellness scan checkup. I'm going to put that in the chat for those who are checking in the chat with us. I'm going to go back real quick so I can give you the links for these ones. So for the science piece for the DNA wellness profile, that link is bit.ly /DNA wellness profile. Once again, it's bit.ly /DNA wellness profile for the science portion for that actual profile to be done for you. On the spirituality side, that one is bit.ly /DNA wellness blueprint. Once again, bit.ly /DNA wellness blueprint. If you're looking to start that way, and like I said, the one we're working. We are actually doing several people like individually test this one and work with the genealogy, and we're actually going through the process of doing this for ourselves and stuff like that. So look for this one to be a whole actual program where we're going to do this as a group, and so we will be announcing that very soon. And so before I go to the Q&A session, I'm going to actually get ready to stop the recording after that, and we'll do our giveaways, and this is how our contact information. So if you did not catch any of those links that I just said and you're wanting to find out some of the services that we have, you can definitely check us out. Remember, we're Ashe Wellness. You can go to our the website. You can also go to email us at info@ashewellness.com. If you are actually looking to schedule an appointment and you didn't catch any of those links that I said, you can go to bit.ly /Ashe Wellness Appointment. Once again, it's bit.ly /Ashe Wellness Appointment, or you can definitely give us a call at 904-624-2044. Once again, we thank you guys so much for tuning in to our segment of discovering and decoding your DNA. We're super excited because we could get geeked out of science techie on this, but it's definitely a passion of ours. It is definitely our niche lane. It is stuff that we love to do. We love showing people themselves. Remember that applied knowledge is power. That's great. Applied knowledge is amazing and awesome, but the true power is applied knowledge about you. Once you discover and are shown you who you are, that's the most like the best power ever. That's why you hear us saying Ashe. Ashe is a Yoruban word that stands for I have the power to change and make things happen. And so we definitely stand by that. We definitely stand by the fact that you are able to find out who you are. And once you find out who you are, you're able to establish and maintain those healing habits for yourself to allow you to live this wellness journey a little bit better, right? With some full knowledge of ways and tips and tricks and some suggestions and some protocols that you can actually set up for yourself in that way. So for those who are watching the replay, you can go ahead and stop here. We're going to have a Q&A session. I'm going to check with people in the chat, and then we'll start the recording. And then those who are on the line, we will do a Q&A session for those who have any personal questions and they want to talk about pricing. Also, just be aware that Ashe Wellness as a practitioner and as a practice, we do accept FSA and HSA. Just to go ahead, if you have those accounts, then usually if you go to your actual whoever's your provider and check and see if they allow you to do genetic testing for wellness scans or bioenginetic scans, if they allow you to do like genetic counseling, things of that nature, then it's usually covered. And so you can also contact us to see if that's something that can be covered as well, to see if you can use your FSA, HSA cards at this time to mitigate some of that cost. So going to thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to helping you find your Ashe as well. Now we're going to go to the Q&A session. I'm going to answer some of those people want to ask questions too as well. Let me see. So if you guys have any questions in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and check that out real quick. Mm-hmm. I will start with some frequently asked questions as we wait for admin to help us on that side over there. Some of the frequently asked questions that we get is on the security of our actual testing, right? So when we do a lab test or we do a genetic test, it does go to a lab. And so a lot of people are saying, hey, selling your information. We work with a clear and HIPAA compliant actual labs, and so they're not able to sell your actual information. Actually, once you pull your raw data file, you can actually delete, and they can, after a certain period of time they destroy the data. But then you're actually able to pull your raw data file, and the information is not sold or shared for the purposes of other companies coming in and purchasing that information. So we actually work with a clear and HIPAA compliant lab at that time. Also, another frequently asked question I've been getting asked lately. A lot of reasons why people don't do this type of services is because as much as we pride ourselves in showing you right, and we know the joy and the benefit and the perks of finding out who you are, some people are actually scared to find out who they are, right? Because they're thinking like, hey, you're gonna diagnose that I have cancer, you're gonna diagnose that I have that, and so those things are like, no, we're not doing any diagnosing. We don't do any diagnosis because, to be honest with you, the diagnosis to us as a practitioner does not matter, because usually a diagnosis is a symptom, right? So we like I said at the beginning, we said we get to the root cause of the issue. If we get into the root cause, those symptoms that pop up, they matter to us, that we have to pay attention to see if you're getting relief. But that's not what we're shooting for. We're not shooting at stars when we can shoot at the moon. Right? We're not shooting at the stars if we can shoot at the moon. We don't want to look at those little things that pop up for you, and then we'll say, "Oh, the moon is big, bright and shiny. It's like shining bright, right?" Like that was the root cause, and then you're looking at the stars that are coming up that are the symptoms. And a lot of people chase symptoms and they never get to the root cause. So showing up and saying, "Hey," and for the cancer, the C word, like I said, we connect with a genetic counselor, because a lot of times, even though you may see a variation or you may not see a variation, how your epigenetics, remember, how your environment, your 8 areas of wellness, how you have been living your life since birth, affects and effects your life and your genes. They either help or they hurt them, right? So if you're a smoker, then those increase the risk of you having those things. Yes, right? If you exercise, eat well enough, do they decrease those things? Yes. Could you still get them? Yes. So it's not a matter about diagnosing. A lot of people are scared, like, hey, they're going to tell me this. When we look at the reports, we're looking at the reports and saying, hey, based off your genetics, you have a higher propensity for this. You have a lower propensity for this. For instance, I am someone who is very much affected by allergies. You probably can hear by the report, sound all nasally and everything, right? But what I have come to find out is that under the area of, for my actual like under that report, I realized and saw that for histamine, I have a very low response to histamine, and when it does response, it's slow. So what that means to me is that I have to be someone who has to be proactive in my care for my actual sinuses and allergies. Because if I do have any type of pollen or type of hay fever or anything like that, first of all, it's going to be low and it's going to be real slow in responding to the the allergen or pollen or whatever. And then when it does respond, it's going to be slow in responding. It's not going to even be a lot. So I learned that, and so I'm able to make those healing habits that we talk about, and I have to maintain them, because now I know a protocol that I have to use to be able to take care of that. And so it's not necessarily a matter of saying diagnosing you anything. Same thing with caffeine. If I drink coffee, it's for naught. I have a very fast metabolism, and I metabolize caffeine very fast, to the point that if I drink caffeine to try to stay awake, it's not. I've already learned that's for naught. I'm just doing that just to be cute or to fit in or just out of habit. Me drinking coffee does not help me stay awake because I have a fast metabol. I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine. So that lets me know, it's like, well, do you really need to be drinking that? Right? I can either make decisions to switch to something else for energy, or to help me sleep or whatever, right? I'm that that's information for me to be able to establish and maintain those healing habits. Nothing saying like diagnose. If I'm someone who is a warrior or warrior for stress or your exercise, that means you just may need to tweak your routine a little bit, right? Or if you for your diet, you may need to be on a Mediterranean diet versus saying I need to be doing keto, right? So it's not for those diagnoses. These are to establish these healing habits so that you can actually be able to have a more healthy and more informed wellness journey, right? So it's not for diagnosing. And a lot of people have been saying that I got a couple questions about that recently about diagnosing. That's why they were a little bit scared about getting the service because they thought they were going to be diagnosed with something. I'm like, no, that's not what we do. Um, any other questions in the chat? Thank you guys so much for recording. For the people who are actually watching the replay or watching the recording, if you have any questions, please do go back to that screen where you can contact us. Let me go to that screen real quick to see if you guys have any other questions or anything. Please feel free to contact us. You can also find us on Facebook as well as Ashe Wellness on Facebook. And we're able to contact you and do that as well to get that. If you go to that link, the bit.ly link, you can actually set appointments to have a complimentary wellness chat. If you want to chat about some things to see which service is going to be a little bit before for you, or if you want to go ahead and schedule the wellness our wellness checkup, then you can do so at that link. So that has all our services, even our booking link to have a complimentary say that 3 times fast. Wellness chat, right? And so those are ways that you can connect with us as well. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop the recording and stop the share. And if the people on the chat have any questions, we will go from there. Thank you guys so much. Remember, Ashe, I have the power to change and make things happen, and so do you. Talk to you guys soon.